There are stories that never made it to the headlines. Stories whispered between truck stops, late-night radio calls, and forgotten police reports locked away somewhere in a metal drawer. The kind of stories you only hear by accident, when the signal cuts through the static, and someone on the other end starts to speak. Tonight, you'll hear 7 of them. Tales buried under decades of dust, from the 1970s through the 1990s, told by the few who never forgot what they saw. These are the stories you were never supposed to hear. But now that you're here, don't turn off the radio. I was 8 years old the first time I saw Candle Cove. It was 1971, early fall. Saturday morning smelled like dust, milk, and the hum of the old Zenith set in my parents' living room. Most of the shows back then were harmless, cartoons about talking bears or claymation cowboys. But Candle Cove felt different. It came on right after Captain Kangaroo, just as the local station started to fade into static between programs. No announcer, no theme music, just that black title card with white letters that looked typed on a broken typewriter. Candle Cove, a show for children. Then it would cut straight to those puppets. They weren't cute, not like Sesame Street. Their faces were carved wood, paint chipped and eyes too large, like they'd been left in the sun too long. One of them, a pirate with brass buttons for eyes, was named Percy, I think. There was also a girl puppet, Janice, and something called the Laughing Ship. It wasn't really a ship at all, more like a mouth carved into a hull that moved when it spoke. Every episode started the same way. Percy would say, "Let's sail to Candle Cove," and the puppets would sway on invisible strings while a faint organ tune played underneath. I used to watch it alone. Mom said she couldn't stand that weird station with the fuzzy signal. Dad worked weekends, so it was just me and the glow of the screen. The funny thing is, I don't remember any real stories. No plots, no jokes, just the puppets talking to each other about things I didn't understand. Words like, "the mouth below," or "stay near the static." Sometimes the screen would flicker, and I'd see what looked like human hands adjusting the puppets, even though it was supposed to be part of the show. Once, I swear, the hands waved at the camera. When I got older, I asked my friends if they remembered it. Most of them just laughed, said I must have dreamed it up. But one of them, Mike Turner, went quiet and said, "Yeah, I remember Candle Cove." My mom caught me crying in front of the TV, said there was nothing on but static. I didn't know what to say, because I remembered that too, how the show would sometimes just stop. The puppet's gone, the voice is gone, only white noise, for minutes at a time, and yet I couldn't look away. 50 years later, I still dream about that static. And sometimes, if I let my TV run too long on an empty channel, I swear I can hear a faint voice through the noise. Let's sail to Candle Cove. It was last winter when I found the tape. A cardboard box from my parents' attic, marked in my mother's handwriting. Old TV shows, do not throw away. Inside were a dozen home-recorded VHS cassettes, yellowed labels, handwriting smudged with age. One of them said, "Candle Cove, 1971, in faint blue ink. I froze when I saw it. I hadn't thought about the show in years, but the name still hit something deep, like the smell of a room you haven't entered since childhood. I didn't even own a VCR anymore, so I borrowed one from a pawn shop 2 towns over. That night, I hooked it up to my flat screen with an adapter, poured myself a drink, and pressed play. At first, nothing but static. Thick, gray snow crawling across the screen, the faint hiss of the tape. Then, a flicker. A black and white image of the old title card. Candle Cove, a show for children. The sound was warped, the kind of warped you can feel in your teeth. And then the puppets appeared, same as I remembered. Percy the pirate, Janice with her chipped smile, and the laughing ship, its wooden mouth opening too wide. But the movements were wrong this time. They didn't sway like puppets. They twitched. And the audio, if it was dialogue, came out as long, stretched moans, like someone trying to speak through water. I leaned closer. Behind the puppets something flickered, not part of the set, more like a person standing in the shadows, moving between the props. The camera shook, zoomed in on Janice's face. Her painted eyes rolled upward, and I saw for a split second that they weren't painted anymore. They were human. I hit pause so hard the player groaned. The frozen image showed the puppet mid-frame, and behind her shoulder, half hidden by the edge of the set, a human hand was visible, pale, adult-sized, gripping the wooden post that held her up. I told myself maybe it was just how the show was made. But then I noticed something carved into the side of the stage set. Letters, half erased by time. Stay near the static. My drink was still in my hand, untouched. The ice had melted. I let the tape play again. This time, the image flickered straight to static, no transition. But faintly, deep in the hiss, I heard children's voices, laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind that stops and starts, like someone's telling them when to laugh. Then, underneath it all, a new sound, a man's voice, calm, rhythmic, barely above a whisper. Remember, children, Candle Cove is where you go when the lights go out. The screen went black, and for a long moment, I thought I could see my reflection in the glass of the TV, until it blinked. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the tape. I didn't sleep much, just replayed it in my head, frame by frame, trying to convince myself it was a trick of old film or bad recording. But something about those words, stay near the static, got stuck in me. So, I did what everyone does now when something doesn't make sense. I went online. It was late, after midnight, when I found a message board called localtvarchive.net. Buried deep in one of their threads from 2009 was a discussion titled, "Anyone remember Candle Cove? That pirate puppet show?" The first post was from someone named Iron Pony 64. I used to watch this with my sister in the early 70s. The puppets scared the hell out of me. Nobody I talk to remembers it. Another reply. Yes, I remember. Channel 58, right? Always came on after school. The laughing ship gave me nightmares. I scrolled down. Dozens of replies. All different ages, different towns. But the same vague memory. The puppets, the static, the hollow music box tune. Then someone posted this. Does anyone remember the last episode? The one where they all just stood there. The replies went quiet for a few pages. Then, a user named Marla K wrote, I do. It wasn't an episode. It was just the puppets, all of them, standing in a row facing the camera. No sound, just static. My mom thought the station was broken. Another user, FM Ghost, added, Yeah, I remember crying. My brother said the pirate kept turning his head, like he could see us. My pulse started to pound. I remembered that too, or at least, I thought I did. But the more I read, the less certain I was that any of us were remembering the same thing. One user claimed the show aired in 1971. Another said 1973. Someone else swore it came from Ohio Public Access. I grew up in California. Then I saw a username that froze me. Mike T_72. Mike Turner. My childhood friend. His post read, I just found this thread. I used to talk about Candle Cove with a friend when we were kids. If he's reading this, I found a photo. Attached was a blurry image, a still from the show. A puppet in the center, grinning too wide, eyes like black glass. But behind it, something else. A child's silhouette. Not wood, not felt. Flesh. The post ended with one line: check the static between channels 11 and 12. That was 2 weeks ago. Mike hasn't posted since. It's strange how easy it is to forget how static sounds, until you really listen. That night, I dug my old flat screen out of the guest room and hooked it to the same VCR I'd used before, just to see. It was past 2 a.m., the same hour Candle Cove used to air. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the set. I switched to channel 11. Nothing but snow. Then channel 12. More static. Same hiss. Same ghost gray glow. But when I started turning the dial back slowly, between 11 and 12, the sound changed. It wasn't just noise anymore. It had a rhythm, like breathing. At first, I thought it was feedback from the VCR, but the tape slot was empty. Still, the sound grew clearer, and underneath it, faint children's laughter. I leaned forward. The static on screen began to pulse, dark and light, almost like it was syncing with a heartbeat. Then, for a split second, the static parted. A frame of video flickered through, the set from Candle Cove. Those same puppets, Percy, Janice, the laughing ship, lined up in front of the camera, motionless. Only now they weren't made of wood. Their faces were pale, stretched, human. Behind them, a shadow loomed taller than the frame. The shape of a man, his head bent just enough that the top of it brushed the static. And then the voice came through. "You came back, Earl." My name isn't Earl. It never was. But when the voice said it, my whole body froze like it had been waiting to hear it. The puppets began to move. Not like before, not jerky or staged. They breathed. Their eyes blinked. Their mouths twitched, almost trying to smile. The voice continued, soft and steady. "You watched. You stayed near the static. Now, it's your turn to make them laugh." The picture brightened until the screen filled with light, and I swear, for a moment, I could see faces inside the glow. Dozens of them, children, all watching. Then the TV went black. I pulled the plug and sat there in the dark, the smell of ozone heavy in the air. The reflection on the blank screen stared back at me, but it wasn't my face. It was something smiling. The next morning I went online to check the forum again. The thread was gone. Every user post deleted. The domain, localtvarchive.net, redirected to a blank white page with one sentence in plain text. Candle Cove, a show for children. And beneath it, in gray letters that flickered once and vanished, tune between the channels. They told us it was for the advancement of Soviet science. That's how they always began. In the winter of 1947, 5 political prisoners were transferred to a military medical facility outside Moscow. All men, all deemed expendable. My name was Dr. Alexei Morozov, chief biologist at Laboratory 11. Our assignment? To test a new stimulant gas said to keep the human brain awake indefinitely without damaging vital organs. The objective was simple: eliminate the need for sleep. The directive, however, was not. The subjects were sealed in an airtight chamber, thick glass, metal bolts, a single speaker connecting them to our control room. There were cots, but no bedding, rations, running water, and a constant low hiss of the gas pumped through overhead vents. At first, it seemed successful. The men spoke freely, joked, sang. They read aloud from torn newspapers we had left inside. Every 6 hours, we broadcast propaganda recordings to maintain morale. By the 3rd day, the laughter grew forced. They began whispering to each other when they thought we couldn't hear. We increased the dosage slightly. On day 5, one subject began pacing in slow, perfect circles around the chamber. 20 steps, turn, 20 steps back. He did this for 6 hours straight. Another man sat motionless beneath the speaker, eyes wide open, whispering to it as if it were whispering back. When we tried to engage through the intercom, None of them responded. Instead, one of them laughed. Not at us, not at anything. Just laughed until blood came from his nose. That night, our oxygen sensors began to fluctuate. We thought it was a mechanical fault, but the technician monitoring the feed swore he saw movement in the air vents, like something crawling backward. On the 7th day, the chamber went completely silent. No talking, no pacing, only the sound of the gas, hissing softly like it was breathing for them. I requested to open the chamber. Command denied it. They wanted 15 days, no less. So we watched and listened and prayed the silence would stay that way. On the 9th day, one of the subjects began screaming. At first, it sounded like a man having a nightmare, gasping, begging, voice cracking between syllables. But then it didn't stop. He screamed for 3 hours straight, throat tearing until the microphone couldn't pick up the pitch anymore. The others didn't react. They just watched him. When his voice finally broke, he climbed onto his cot, pulled a wire from the wall, and tore open his own chest. We thought he'd die instantly, but he didn't. He sat upright for nearly half an hour, wheezing through blood, still awake. And the others, they helped him. They didn't try to stop it. They whispered to him, gently, like priests comforting the dying. When he finally collapsed, they laid him on the floor and returned to their corners. We begged Command to end the test. They refused. They said, "Observe the reaction. Record everything." So we did. By day 10, the remaining 4 had begun tearing pages from their newspapers and stuffing them into the drains. They used their own blood as glue. When the ventilation clogged, the gas pressure increased automatically, and the hissing grew louder. We tried to speak through the intercom again. One of them, the youngest, approached the microphone. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated, veins like spider webs under translucent skin. He smiled. "We don't want to be freed," he said. "We're awake now." The others nodded behind him, each holding something sharp, pieces of metal torn from the cot frames. Command finally agreed to open the chamber at day 15, but when we cut the power to the gas, all 4 subjects began screaming at once. It wasn't fear, it was rage. They threw themselves against the glass, clawing, biting, begging to have the gas turned back on. I'll never forget their voices. They sounded like children being dragged away from their mother. When the door seals disengaged, soldiers entered with rifles. 3 men went inside, only 1 came out. The chamber was filled with the smell of iron and decay. The prisoners were still standing. Skin split open, nails missing, eyes wild, but awake, still awake. When the soldiers dragged the bodies out, the chamber looked like a slaughterhouse. Walls slick with blood, sheets of torn skin hanging like curtains. 2 of the subjects were already dead, or close enough. The 3rd died on the table as we tried to sedate him. The 4th refused to die. We injected morphine, enough to stop a man's heart twice over, but he only smiled through broken teeth. Then he said something that made every man in that room take a step back. "You can't kill what's awake." We restrained him, strapped him to a surgical bed, and began repairing the damage to his body. Every rib visible, lungs torn, intestines coiled like rope, yet his eyes never closed. Even without anesthesia, he didn't scream. He laughed. Every time his blood pressure dropped, he begged the doctors to turn the gas back on. He said he could feel sleep coming for him, crawling up from somewhere deep below his mind. By dawn, he was the only one still breathing. Command ordered us to question him. We asked what he was. He answered in perfect Russian, clear and steady. "We are the same. We are what you hide when you close your eyes." He told us the gas didn't create something new. It revealed what was already there. He said sleep wasn't rest, but a cage, a way for the human mind to hide from itself. And when we took that cage away, we saw what was inside. The colonel scoffed, called it delirium, and ordered him euthanized. But when the guard raised his pistol, the man on the table whispered, "If you let me sleep, you'll wake up beside me." The guard fired. The shot echoed through the hall like thunder. For a few seconds, everything was still. Then, the prisoner smiled one last time, his lips cracked open and dry. "We are the dream you keep killing." His heart stopped at 7:03 a.m., but the monitor, the EEG, stayed active. Brain waves continued for 13 more minutes, fluctuating wildly, like something still moving behind the skull. When the machine finally flatlined, the gas system, long disabled, activated itself. A low hiss filled the room again. And I swear, just before the chamber filled with smoke, I heard 5 voices whispering in unison. "Stay awake." They said the project was terminated, that the chamber was sealed and the research destroyed. But I was there. I know the truth. The bodies were burned, yes, but not all of them were dead. 2 were still breathing when the flames took them. And the gas never stopped. It moved through the vents, through the cracks in the lab. The smell of it clung to our clothes, our hair, our skin. For weeks afterward, I could hear the faint hiss of it in my ears every time I closed my eyes. I left the program in 1951. They said I was unfit for continued service. I said nothing. For years I tried to sleep again. Pills, alcohol, prayers. But every time I drifted off, I'd hear them. Those same voices, whispering behind my eyelids. "You know what's inside you, doctor. You know what you tried to bury." And when I looked in the mirror each morning, the man looking back at me wasn't the same. The eyes stayed open too long. The lips smiled when I didn't. I wrote reports, burned them, tried to forget. But memory has no mercy. In 1992, a young historian came to visit me. Said she was researching Cold War experiments. She had the clearance letter from Moscow with my name on it. She smiled and said, "They found the chamber, Dr. Morozov." "It's still intact." I asked her if she'd opened it. She hesitated, then nodded. She said the walls were clean, too clean, as if something had been licking them. Before she left, she asked me one last question. "What did you see, doctor? What was really in that gas?" I didn't answer her then, but if she's still alive and somehow hears this is my answer. The gas didn't make monsters. It showed us the ones we already were. It stripped away sleep, and with it, the lie that we're civilized. When the mind stays awake long enough, it remembers what it is. And what it is, isn't human. So if you ever wake in the middle of the night, eyes wide, heart pounding, and feel like something is watching from inside your skull, it's not a nightmare. It's the truth trying to wake up. We are what you hide when you close your eyes. April 3rd, 1992. We moved in today. The house on Pine Hollow Lane looks even prettier than I remembered. Yellow shutters, white porch, a big maple tree in the front yard. It smells like old wood and lemon polish, the kind of house that feels lived in. John says it's a fresh start. He got promoted at the plant, and we finally had enough to leave the apartment. Our daughter, Emily, keeps calling it our forever home. I smiled when she said that. I wanted to believe it. While unpacking, I noticed something odd in the living room. A mirror. A tall, antique one, built into the wall between 2 bookcases. It wasn't in the listing photos. Thick wooden frame, carved with vines and tiny roses. When I looked closely, the glass wasn't perfectly clear. It had that faint rippling, like heat over asphalt. I asked John if he'd seen it. He said, "Probably original to the house. Don't mess with it. Might be worth something." So I cleaned around it, polished the glass, and tried not to stare too long. But it had a strange depth to it, like standing at the edge of a deep pool. That night, after Emily went to bed, I passed by it again. Our reflection was faint in the dark, just me, the hallway lamp, the soft outline of boxes. But when I switched off the light, the glass still glowed, a soft gray shimmer, pulsing like breath. I told myself it was my eyes adjusting to the dark, but I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still see that faint, breathing glow. April 8th, 1992. It started with the smile. Emily was playing in the living room while I folded laundry. The TV was off, but she kept looking at the mirror, giggling. I asked what she was laughing at. She said, "The lady in the mirror." I smiled, thinking it was just a game. But then she said something that made my stomach tighten. "She smiles when you don't, Mommy." That night, after Emily went to bed, I went downstairs again. I stood in front of the mirror. The reflection looked normal. Same tired face, same messy hair. I forced a smile. The reflection smiled. I stopped. So did it. Then, a second later, it smiled again. Just a little too wide. The corners of the mouth stretching farther than mine had. And the eyes, they didn't smile at all. I froze, staring, not daring to move. Then John came down the stairs, asking why I was still awake. When I looked back, the mirror was normal again. I told him it was nothing, just tricks of light. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching through that glass. Over the next few days, I avoided the living room. Every time I passed, I felt a faint chill on my skin, like static in the air. Emily stopped playing there too. She said, "The lady doesn't like Daddy." I asked her what that meant. She just shrugged and said, "She frowns when he walks by." April 15th, 1992. I went to the library today. There's something wrong with that mirror. I know it now. John laughed when I told him. He said stress and unpacking were getting to me. But the smile in the mirror wasn't mine, and I've seen it twice since that night. The librarian was kind, an older woman named Margaret. When I gave her our address, she raised an eyebrow. "Oh," she said softly. "Pine Hollow Lane. That's the Garrison house, isn't it?" I told her I didn't know. She disappeared into the archives for a while and came back with an old folder, yellowed and brittle. Inside were newspaper clippings. 1978, Elmwood Chronicle. Local woman killed in apparent domestic dispute. My stomach dropped as I read. The victim's name was Lydia Garrison. The article said she was found in the living room, next to a shattered mirror built into the wall. Her husband claimed it was an accident, that she fell. But the coroner's report said her neck was broken at an angle inconsistent with a fall. The case was never reopened. The husband moved away. The house was sold 3 years later. When I got home, the house felt wrong, too quiet, like the air was holding its breath. Emily was sitting on the couch, staring at the mirror again. I asked what she was looking at. "She's sad today," Emily said. "Why?" I asked. She said the man hurt her. I tried to stay calm. "Emily, who told you that?" She looked at me through the reflection instead of turning around. "The lady," she whispered. "She talks better in here." That night, I covered the mirror with a sheet. But just before I went upstairs, the sheet moved. Not like it fell. It breathed. April 22nd, 1992. I don't know how long the sheet has been gone. I woke up this morning and it wasn't there. John swore he hadn't touched it. Emily said, "The lady didn't like being covered." I tried to call someone, the pastor, the realtor, anyone, but the phone line was dead. The dial tone just hissed, like static. That night I saw it again. My reflection. No, her reflection. She stood perfectly still while I moved. Every time I blinked, she was closer. The smile was gone now. Her mouth hung open, eyes wet and desperate. She mouthed something I couldn't hear, so I leaned closer. Her lips moved again, slower this time. "Let me out." I stumbled back, knocking over the lamp. John came running down the stairs, shouting. He said I was scaring Emily, but when I pointed to the mirror, he saw nothing, just our own reflections. He grabbed my shoulders and said, "It's all in your head." But behind him, I saw her, standing over his shoulder, and she was smiling again. I screamed. The lights flickered. The glass rippled. John turned to look, and the mirror exploded. I don't remember much after that. There was blood, Emily crying, and something crawling out of the frame like smoke. Now the mirror is gone. John took Emily to his sister's. He said he needs space. I'm staying here to clean up. But sometimes, when the sun hits the wall just right, I still see a faint reflection. as if the glass never really left. And when I move away, my reflection doesn't. She just stands there, smiling. I used to listen to AM radio on long drives. You know the kind. Voices fading in and out of static, late-night preachers, ghost stories between old country songs. It was 1991. I was hauling parts between Kentucky and D.C., driving through fog so thick I could barely see the lines on the road. Somewhere near Roanoke, I caught a strange broadcast. The host called himself Nightline Mike. He said tonight's topic was the number that calls you back. People were phoning in, swearing it was real. They said if you dialed 202-456-XXXX exactly at midnight, you'd hear yourself, older, desperate, warning you not to do something. Mike laughed, called it an urban legend for insomniacs. But one caller sounded different. His voice was low, shaky. He said, "It's not a prank. I tried it. I heard my own voice, and it told me how I'd die." Then the line went dead. For the rest of the drive, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The 202 area code. That's DC. White House territory. What kind of number could even exist there that wasn't traceable? When I got to my motel that night, I couldn't help myself. I picked up the old beige rotary phone, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the clock. 11:59 p.m. I started to dial. 2, 0, 2, 4, 5, 6. The phone hissed, loud and sharp. Then, silence. At exactly midnight, a voice came through. It was faint, cracked with static, and it said my name. Tom? It was my own voice, but older. Tom? The voice was trembling, older, breathless, like someone who hadn't spoken in years. "Who is this?" I asked. No answer, just a long exhale through the static. Then, "Don't hang up." The line buzzed so loud I had to hold the receiver away from my ear. The sound wasn't like normal interference. It was breathing, heavy, slow, matching mine. Finally, the voice said, "I don't have much time." "You're me. 10 years from now," I laughed. Nervous reflex. But the man didn't. "You remember the radio tonight, right? Nightline Mike? Don't call again. Promise me." My hand went cold around the phone. "How do you know about that?" "I remember doing this," he whispered. "I remember sitting there, thinking this was a joke. But it's not. If you call again, it changes everything." "What changes?" "You'll find out. You'll wish you hadn't." The line started distorting, like someone dragging metal across a microphone. Then the voice cracked through it, louder this time, panicked. "Don't drive tomorrow." I froze. "Why not?" Silence. Then a faint sound, tires screeching, metal crunching. "Tom, please," the voice begged. "Stay home tomorrow." The call ended with a click. I sat there, staring at the receiver, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. The motel room felt smaller. The air smelled like ozone, the way it does after lightning hits close by. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the phone unplugged. But at 3:14 a.m., it started ringing anyway. I didn't answer the call at 3:14. I just sat there and watched it ring. The red light on the phone flickered like a heartbeat. After 7 rings, it stopped. The next morning, I told myself it was all nerves. Just a story, a coincidence. So I got in my truck anyway. The sky was gray, heavy with rain. I turned on the radio to drown out my thoughts. Every channel was static except one. A man's voice was whispering under the interference, faint, but clear enough to make my skin crawl. "You shouldn't have driven, Tom." I switched stations. Same voice. Then the radio went dead completely. For the next few miles, the world felt too quiet. No birds, no other cars, just the hum of the tires and the steady drum of rain. I gripped the wheel tighter. Around mile marker 117, something flashed ahead. A truck jackknifed across the highway. I hit the brakes, tires screaming on the wet asphalt. The cab fishtailed, spinning sideways. And in that blur of motion, I heard it again. My own voice from the phone, screaming through the static. I told you not to drive. The world went white, metal bent, glass shattered. When I woke, I was upside down in the ditch. Steam hissed from the radiator. Rain tapped against the broken windshield like fingers. The police said it was a miracle I survived. The other driver, a man in his 50s, didn't. His truck had crossed the median trying to avoid something he thought he saw on the road. They said his name was Thomas Gray, same name as mine. I told myself it was coincidence. But when I got home from the hospital, the phone was ringing again, and on the caller ID, scratched and old, the number was 202-456-XXXX. 10 years since the crash. I moved to a smaller town, changed jobs, changed everything I could. But I never changed the number. I couldn't. Because some nights, the phone still rings. Always at the same time. 3:14 a.m. Always from that same number. I never answer, not anymore. But last night, I did. The line clicked softly, like someone picking up on the other end. No breathing this time, just silence. Then I heard my own voice, younger, sharper. Who is this? My chest went tight, because I remembered that exact night, in that motel room, holding the receiver just like this. It was me, back then. And I realized what was about to happen. I wanted to hang up, to stop it, but I didn't. I said the same words I'd heard all those years ago. Don't hang up. My throat felt dry. I could almost hear the hum of that motel air conditioner behind his voice. I don't have much time, I said. You're me. 10 years from now. Static crawled through the line. He laughed, the same nervous laugh I once had. And in that moment, I understood. The call never stopped. It's a loop, a wire coiled through time, always connecting the same two moments. Maybe I started it. Maybe it started itself. But as the hiss grew louder, I whispered the words I once heard. Don't drive tomorrow. Silence, then faint breathing, then a single word, terrified. Why? I closed my eyes, and for the first time I heard myself crying on the other end. When the call ended, I sat there for hours, holding the dead receiver, listening to the static fade into nothing. I looked at the phone. The red light was still on, flickering softly. Then, from somewhere far away, I heard the faint echo of my own voice saying, Tom? I don't know which side of the line I'm on anymore. When I was a kid, every town had its story. Ours was about the man in the raincoat. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. Lots of cul-de-sacs, chain-link fences, and those long concrete tunnels under the road where rainwater flowed after storms. Everyone called it the drain. My dad used to say, "Don't go near the drain when it rains. That's where he waits." I asked who he was. Dad just shook his head and said, "The man who never left the storm." Back then, I thought it was just something parents made up to keep us away from danger. But all the kids on our block knew the legend. They said if you looked down into the tunnel after dark, you'd see him. A man in a yellow raincoat, standing ankle-deep in water. And if you called out, he'd call back. Same voice, same words, like an echo that wasn't really yours. I never believed it. Not until the summer of '75. It rained for 3 days straight. The kind of rain that fills every gutter and makes the air smell like metal and worms. My best friend Eric said we should go see if the Raincoat Man was real. I told him no. But that night, I followed him anyway. The storm had calmed by evening, but the streets were still wet, puddles glowing orange under the streetlights. Eric showed up at my door with 2 flashlights and that grin he always had when he was about to do something stupid. "Come on," he said. "He only shows up after it rains." We cut through the empty park, down past the swing set that creaked in the wind. The drain was about 100 yards long, a round concrete tunnel with graffiti, worms, and the constant sound of dripping water. It smelled like rust and mud. When we got close enough to see inside, the beam from Eric's flashlight hit the far end of the tunnel. Nothing there, just black water and walls slick with moss. "See?" I said. "It's just a story." Eric smirked. "Then say his name." "What?" He grinned wider. "They say if you say Raincoat Man 3 times, he answers." I told him to stop being an idiot, but he raised his flashlight, pointed it into the tunnel and shouted, "Raincoat Man! Raincoat Man! Rain!" He didn't finish the third, because something answered. It wasn't an echo. It came from deeper in the tunnel, slow, wet, and low. "Coat Man." The sound rolled toward us, not like a voice, more like a breath dragged through water. Eric froze. His flashlight flickered once, twice, then went out. Mine stayed on, just long enough to see something at the far end of the tunnel. A shape. A man. Standing ankle-deep in the runoff, wearing a yellow raincoat, head tilted slightly like he was listening. Then he lifted his arm and pointed, right at us. I don't remember running home that night. Just the sound of rain slapping the pavement and Eric shouting my name. When I turned around, he wasn't there anymore. The cops said he probably slipped into one of the side drains and got swept away. They never found his body. The grown-ups called it a tragic accident, but every kid in town knew what really happened. After that, the city sealed the tunnel. Big iron grates, welded shut, and for years no one talked about the Raincoat Man again. Time passed. I grew up, moved away, got married, had kids. Life has a way of burying things, even the kind you shouldn't forget. Then last year, I had to go back for my father's funeral. The house looked smaller, quieter. The neighborhood felt empty. It started raining that night, the same heavy kind of rain from '75, and I don't know why, but I drove to the park. The grate was still there, rusty, covered in vines. Water rushing underneath, echoing faintly through the metal. I stood there for a while, watching the flow, listening. Then I heard it, faint, almost drowned out by the storm. "Tommy." I froze. No one had called me that name in decades. I leaned closer to the grate. The smell of wet iron filled my nose. "Come back." It was Eric's voice. I swear it was. And somewhere below, deep in the dark, something moved. A flash of yellow, like fabric, like a raincoat. It's raining again tonight, harder than I've heard in years, the kind of rain that sounds like whispering when it hits the windows. I moved back after Dad died. The house was cheap, and I told myself the memories didn't scare me anymore. But I was wrong. Every time it storms, the drains start to sing. Just a low hum at first, like water running through pipes. Then, if you listen long enough, you can hear words. I've stopped telling people what I hear. They just smile politely and change the subject. But I know what I hear. "Tommy, come back." Sometimes I dream about that night. The tunnel, the flashlight beam flickering off wet concrete, and that yellow shape standing still in the dark. In the dream, I always turn around, and he's closer. Last week, during a storm, I walked to the park again. The grate's still sealed, but the ground was soft, water pooling around the edges. I knelt down, listened. The rain stopped for a moment, and from below, clear as day, I heard a voice say, "It's dry down here, Tommy." Then the water surged up through the grate, warm, heavy, pulling at my hands. I stumbled back, slipped, and when I looked up, there was a man standing by the edge of the park. Yellow raincoat. No face. Just rain dripping from where his eyes should have been. He raised his arm, pointed at me, same as before, and then he was gone. It's raining again tonight, and the storm drain outside my window keeps filling faster than it should. Every drop hits the metal like a heartbeat. I keep telling myself not to look, but I can see the reflection of something yellow in the puddle by the curb. He's still waiting, and maybe this time, I will go back. I've been a ham radio operator since I was a teenager. You could say I grew up with static in my veins. While most kids my age were sneaking out to parties, I was tuning antennas on the roof of my parents' garage, chasing voices from across the world. By 1984, I'd set up a full rig in my basement, a Hallicrafter's receiver, home-built antenna, and stacks of reel-to-reel tapes for recording unusual frequencies. That was the year I first heard it. I was scanning the 5 megahertz band one night when I caught a faint rhythm buried under the noise. Not Morse code, not numbers from a spy station, just a voice repeating a single sequence. 7, 4, 1, 1, 5. Over and over, calm, mechanical, almost polite. I thought it was interference from a nearby station, but when I checked the logbooks, no one else was broadcasting on that frequency. I turned the dials again, slower this time. There it was. 7, 4, 1, 1, 5. Each repeat was exactly 13 seconds apart. I recorded 10 minutes of it, then the signal cut off abruptly, replaced by silence. I didn't think much of it until the next night, when it came back at the same exact time, 2:17 a.m. Same voice, same numbers, same rhythm, and then a new sound underneath, a click, a breath, like someone just leaned in closer to the microphone. After the second night, I started keeping a log. Same frequency, same timestamp, 2:17 a.m. exactly. Every time the signal would last for 10 minutes, then fade into static. Always the same 5 digits. At first, I tried mapping them to coordinates. Nothing matched. Then I noticed something else. The tone of the voice wasn't recorded. It changed slightly each night, like whoever, or whatever, was reading the numbers was reacting to something. On the 5th night, there was a pause after the last 5. Then the voice whispered something else, almost too faint to catch. I replayed the tape over and over. It wasn't in English. It sounded like breathing through water. I boosted the volume, filtered the noise. That's when I saw the waveform, not random static, but a pattern. Every 13th transmission, the pitch dipped exactly 1.3 decibels lower. That's impossible for analog drift. It was intentional, so I decided to answer. At 2:16 a.m., the next night, I tuned in early and transmitted back using my own call sign. I said, "Station broadcasting sequence 74,115. Do you copy?" Static. Then, faintly, "Copy." My blood went cold. I checked the mic switch. It was still off. I hadn't transmitted yet. The signal repeated. 7, 4, 1, 1, 5. Copy. Then silence. I sat there, staring at the radio. The dials glowed dull orange, the reel-to-reel still turning, recording everything. And right before the tape ran out, one final sound came through, faint but human. A voice whispering my name. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at the recorder. The reel spun quietly, the tape glinting under the desk lamp. At dawn, I rewound it and pressed play. The usual static filled the room. White noise, hums, and faint number tones. Nothing unusual. But when I slowed the playback to half speed, I noticed something under the sequence. A second rhythm, hidden beneath the numbers. It wasn't static. It was a voice. Faint, wet, like someone speaking through water or glass. I ran it through every filter I had, stripping away the upper frequencies until only the low end remained. Then, suddenly, clear as day, I heard it. "Help me." I froze, played it again, same thing. "Help me." It wasn't a coincidence. It was in the signal, buried between the numbers like a message hidden inside the noise. I checked the tape counter. The phrase appeared exactly at 7 minutes and 41 seconds into the recording. 741. Then it repeated 15 seconds later. 74,115. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a sequence, it was a timestamp. a location in the recording itself. But what was it pointing to? I flipped the reel, reversed the direction, and played it backward. At first, nothing, just the same static. Then, at that exact timestamp, the voice came again. This time it wasn't saying "help me." It was saying my name. Robert. The light on the receiver flickered, once, twice. The sound meter twitched, even though I wasn't transmitting. And in the headphones, beneath the hiss, I heard breathing. Slow, close, like someone standing right behind me. I unplugged everything that night, took the receiver apart, cut power to the basement. But even in the dark, I could still hear it. Faint, buried deep in the wiring. That slow, polite rhythm. 7, 4, 1, 1, 5. I tried convincing myself it was all in my head, that the voice I heard wasn't real. Until the following week, when I got a call from a friend, another radio hobbyist 2 states over. He said, "Hey Robert, weirdest thing. I picked up a new number station last night. It's saying your name." My stomach turned cold. I asked him to describe it. He said the voice sounded just like mine. That night, I powered the equipment back on. The receiver glowed to life, soft amber light filling the room. At 2:17 a.m., the signal returned, stronger than ever. This time, no numbers, just a single line, spoken in my own voice. Recording sequence: 7, 4, 1, 1, 5. Then, silence. The VU meter flickered even though I hadn't pressed record. And then, faintly, I heard my own breathing through the headphones. Perfectly synced. Every inhale, every exhale. The static began to build again, but under it, there was something new. A faint background hiss, like a room tone that wasn't mine. I whispered into the mic, "Who are you?" And the voice on the broadcast, my voice, whispered back, "Still here." Then everything went dead. I checked the reel the next morning. There was no recording, just silence, until the 7-minute 41-second mark. That's when the numbers started again. Same sequence. But this time, the voice didn't sound mechanical. It sounded tired, like it had been repeating the same thing for years, waiting for someone to answer. 7, 4, 1, 1, 5.
Story 15. The Pine Barrens Memorandum. Part 1. The report begins. Field Memorandum, August 14th, 1981. Location: Brendan T. Byrne State Forest, New Jersey. Officer: Ranger Howard B. Wells, ID number 2431. Routine patrol, northern sector. No fire hazards detected. Temperature, 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind east. Locals keep talking about the noise again, the scream in the woods. Claims of livestock missing near the old cranberry bogs. Deputy says it's foxes or maybe coyotes, but I've lived here 40 years and I've never heard any animal make that kind of sound. It's high-pitched, carries for miles. First report was in 1957. Last time was 72, and now it's back again. Forest feels different lately. Air thicker, quieter. No crickets, no frogs. Even the pine needles don't rustle the same. I radioed HQ at 1940, said I'd stay overnight near the Warden Creek trailhead to record the sound if it happens again. Brought extra batteries, a handheld tape recorder, and my father's old Winchester. Locals call this area the Devil's Mile. Never believed in those stories, until tonight. At 22:11 I heard it. Long, shrill, like a woman screaming through metal. It came from deep within the trees, somewhere past the ridgeline, and for a moment, I swear the pines bent, as if something massive passed overhead. Story 15. The Pine Barrens Memorandum. Part 2. The Howell Field Memorandum, August 15th, 1981, 1:12 a.m. Set up camp, 200 yards north of Wharton Creek. Light drizzle, low visibility. Recorded ambient forest noise on tape A. Nothing unusual for first hour. At 00:47 a.m., microphone detected low-frequency vibration. Measured approximately 30 hertz. Too low for known local fauna. Sound lasted 9 seconds, followed by silence. Then it came again. Longer this time. Clearer. It didn't echo like an animal call. It resonated. The trees seemed to absorb it, and the air got heavy, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Checked the ground near the creek. Found impressions in the sand. Hoof-shaped, but much larger than deer. Each print nearly 11 inches across, and deep, as if something extremely heavy had passed through recently. The smell was strange too. Metallic, burnt, like ozone after lightning. The pine needles around the prints were singed black. Heard a branch crack behind me. Turned the light. Nothing there. Recorder still running. But when I replayed the tape, there was something. Between the static and the wind. Faint. Almost human. Howard. My name. Spoken like a whisper inside a metal pipe. I checked the radio. Dead signal. HQ frequency unresponsive. Writing this now from the tent. The forest is completely silent again. Even the wind stopped. I'll resume patrol at dawn. But if the sound returns, I'll record until tape runs out. End of log. Field Memorandum, August 15th, 1981, 03:04 a.m. Tape B, rolling. Wind picking up. Sky dark. No visible moonlight. I followed the prints deeper along the creek. They stopped at a clearing where the trees grew sparse, almost burnt from the base up. The ground was warm. At 2:58, the sound returned. Not a scream this time. Lower. A growl that vibrated through the dirt. It was close. I pointed my flashlight forward. Beam hit something pale between the trees. Two eyes reflected the light. Yellow. Unblinking. Then it moved. Fast. Too fast. Wings. I swear to God. Wings. They unfolded from its back. Thin. Leathery. Like a bat's. But huge. Stretching across the clearing. The thing stood upright. Taller than a man. Legs jointed backwards like a horse's. And that face. Elongated. Nostrils flaring. Muzzle dripping with something dark. It looked right at me. Didn't move for several seconds. Then it screamed. The recorder peaked. The sound blew out the mic completely. I couldn't hear anything else for nearly a minute. When the ringing in my ears stopped, I realized it was gone. No movement, no sound, just the smell. That same metallic scent, heavy and electric, hanging in the air like burnt copper. My flashlight flickered out. I tried the radio again. Dead. Then something brushed the top of the tent from outside. Soft, slow. I heard claws drag along the fabric, leaving faint lines. I whispered into the recorder. If anyone finds this, I saw it. It's real. It's not a story. End of memorandum. Recovered material. September 3rd, 1981. Source, Tape B. Brendan T. Byrne. State Forest Ranger Station Archive audio begins mid-static. Duration, 18 minutes, 47 seconds. First 4 minutes, wind, distant rainfall. Faint heartbeat picked up on microphone, likely operator. At 4:13, a low groaning sound, possibly a tree bending or an animal. Then, faint human breathing. At 5:06, voice confirmed, male, consistent with Ranger Howard B. Wells. Speech distorted, partially intelligible. It's above. I can hear the wings. It knows I'm recording. Scratching noise follows, like claws on metal. Tape warbles from 5:32 to 6:15, possibly due to magnetic interference. At 7:41, the voice returns. Don't come looking. Then silence, until 8:29. A new sound emerges, deep, rhythmic, pulsing. identical to the howl described in previous logs, but slower, almost like breathing. Tape ends abruptly at 9:12. Supplemental note: September 4th, 1981. Search teams found Wells's camp 3 miles east of Wharton Creek. Tent torn open. Recorder half buried in sand. No sign of the officer. Final transmission on HQ radio occurred at 3:14 a.m. that same night. Only one word was captured before static overtook the signal. Wings. End of file. If you've made it this far, then you've heard things most people were never meant to hear. Maybe you'll forget these stories when the night ends, or maybe one of them will follow you, just like the voices that once echoed through the static. Some say the signal never really stops, it just waits for someone else to tune in. Until then, keep your lights low and your radio on. You've been listening to True Dread Stories. Subscribe for more true creepy tales every week.